Let's start again. Welcome to the Social Work Race, guys. It's Curtis here, and I'm having trouble talking. And we're hoping that all of our tech challenges end right now because it's a lot of stress. So, this is the platform for newly qualified social workers and social work students who have been running for a while now. I'm trying to have a really down to earth look at the social work field, and I want you to hit the ground running as effectively as you can. I love social work, but it is challenging. Today with me, I have Michelle, can I say you are a safeguarding lead and head teacher?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. I've been waiting to do this particular topic for a while, and it's not 100% structured. Michelle doesn't know all of my questions. We've kept it fresh. We've had an interesting discussion yesterday, no, day before actually. And I'm so grateful to have you on again, highly anticipated, because if anything, probably most of our referrals in social services come from schools. Interesting. But what I'll do is I'll let you introduce yourself, starting with yourself and then with your career. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, Curtis, for a start. My name's Michelle. I well, first of all, I'm a mum. I have three children. One's a teenager, 17, and then my two boys are in primary school.
Hmm.
Um, and then in terms of work, my role is quite complex. I have two parts to it. So I'm an executive head. So I have my own school in South London. And I'm also, because my school is part of a trust, I am the executive responsible for safeguarding across the trust. And we have 19 schools in our trust. So my role is in two parts, partly head teacher, and then the other part is the responsibility for safeguarding across the trust. Um, I have been a teacher for 27 years. It's all I've ever done. And I absolutely love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. It is challenging. And at my heart, even though I'm a head teacher and I'm an executive, and the best part of the job is going into school and talking to children every day. That is the thing that wakes me up in the morning is children. It's a privilege.
That primary or secondary?
Primary.
Mm. If I was going to work in a school, it would have to be primary because I don't know if I have the patience for secondary. Saying that, I'm always building great relationships with young people. So, when you're in there, you just do it right.
Absolutely. And I think if you were to ask any of my secondary colleagues, they would say the same of primary. Like, there's no way I could work in a primary school. A lot of them say that.
Mm. Yeah, and I was going to ask you, do you love your job? That is actually a question on my screen, but the answer is obviously
I
yes.
do, I do. And you have to love it, to be honest, to do this job because particularly now it is very challenging.
Ooh, we're going to talk about it. You opened it up nicely. Just so you know, I mean, I haven't interviewed Michelle before. We've had a conversation, and most of the time when I have guests on, it is a slight gamble because what I don't do is I don't rehearse. I don't give them the answers. I say keep a lot of the information to yourself. It's better when it's fresh on a day. So she has a very skeleton idea as to what we're going to talk about today. But Michelle, I have trust in you
Thank you.
that you won't let yourself down or let us down. And I say that in the sense of, I remember having one guest, this was about 3 years ago, and she let the side down because she got a bit happy, started saying the things she didn't need to say. But it's only really happened once. So yeah, Michelle, yeah, no, I'm in good hands, I think.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, no, you are. And let's go straight into it. I mean, I was really about doing this episode with a safeguarding lead because obviously we get most of our referrals through. But I think over time, I've just been thinking what schools are really doing. So it's easy on the outside. We're like, you'll hear rhetoric. We need good teachers. We need quality teachers. And I'm like, it's not really like that. And then, sorry, I'm going to sneeze because I've got a cold at the moment, so I'm going to do that. I'm not even going to edit it out. It is what it is. And then also, I remember, years ago, I'd be saying to myself, teaching cannot be that hard. Because I've got another friend who's been doing it forever as well. Teaching can't be that hard, especially if you get 6 weeks holiday. What are you guys doing? And then you get every half term, you get in a week or two. What could be so hard about teaching? Just teach English, math, science. Actually, being on my side of the game of social work, where we receive our referrals, I'm like, are you guys even teaching? That's my genuine question. So I remember I'm a 70s baby, mid 70s.
Same.
Yeah, same. We don't look it, but that's all right. I'm guessing that teaching was far less complex. In probably was just about teaching, whereas now I wonder what it is. This is why I really wanted to do this episode. So, what are you guys doing in your 6 weeks holidays? The first question.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things we do in terms of safeguarding is you have to be able to have some sort of contact. So if somebody were to send an email to say that they had a concern, you would have to have somebody who would pick that up. And that's all through the holidays.
Wow.
And if you make the mistake of not putting your out of office on, so we usually use our school office for that, but if you make the mistake of not putting your out of office on and you receive an email, you are obliged to respond to that.
So
So yeah,
the holiday is not a holiday.
it's not really a holiday. And obviously you care. So you will have your vulnerable families and you just know those children might not be having the best time. Sometimes we do make phone calls to check in. At Christmas, we'll organise hampers for certain vulnerable families, presents for certain vulnerable families.
Wow.
So yeah, a holiday isn't. And then when you come back from the holidays, and it doesn't matter whether it's a long holiday or a short holiday, you will always get those children who have had a tough time in the holidays, and you have to make the time to speak to them, to listen to them, in order to get them back on track to do what they're supposed to do when they're at school, which is learn.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's the way you articulate what's really going on, and I think this is going to be one of those heavy sessions. I think what I wanted to do is just talk about your role. Tell us what you do, and tell us what safeguarding leads do. So obviously you're a head teacher as well, but
Mhm.
wherever you want to start, what do you do?
So, in terms of my school role, I'll talk about that role because that's where I am a safeguarding lead. In terms of my trust role, I'm more strategic and or will support with really high level um, cases. But in terms of my school role, I am a DSL. So if an adult has a concern about a child, they will record that on our safeguarding system. And schools have different systems. Some have something called CPOMS, My Concern. We use Bromcom, and there are other systems out there. Um, Once that concern is logged, then it is triaged. So somebody from the safeguarding team will need to pick that up and make a decision about what happens next.
Mm,
It could be anything, the response to that could be, okay, the class teacher needs to talk to the parent. So it could be that the child has said they haven't had breakfast. So a teacher might put that on the system as a concern. And then as DSLs, we need to decide. So it could be just, it's that one off that child hasn't had breakfast, but we have to look at the context and only the DSLs have access to that context. So it could be that this is the 10th time that this child has come to school and said they haven't had breakfast, in which case it's a greater concern and the threshold, it perhaps meets a higher threshold of concern. And then we need to make bigger decisions about what happens next. Um,
mm,
and so day to day, we get concerns put on by staff all the time. It could be to do with behaviour, it could be to do with attendance, it could be concerns about neglect, it could be concerns mental health, it could be parental mental health, it could be domestic violence, um, it could be just their presentation, um, and again, it could be physical abuse. Any concern that comes up that would go, it could be just the child's mood has completely shifted.
Yeah.
It could be they come in and they smell of weed. All of those things are put onto the safeguarding system, and DSLs triage those and decide what action to take from those concerns.
You
And so the
say,
whole time you're building up a picture of a child.
and you say children coming in primary school age smelling of weed.
Yes, so that's usually obviously the parents have been smoking weed around the child. That happens quite often, and it's very difficult to prove. So, but you have to let the parents know that you know that you could smell that, and it is an issue.
Okay. What do you love about your job?
What do I love? I love the concept of every child's childhood being protected and them being able to squeeze every moment out of their childhood and enjoy it, because we know as adults it's just gone in a flash.
Yeah.
So to enjoy that period of time in your life, to feel free and not to have anything to worry about, to learn all of the skills that you're going to need as an adult in and feel safe to be able to try different things and have different conversations and develop in a healthy way. That's what I enjoy seeing, and that's why safeguarding is really important to me, because I believe in that for every single child.
Mm.
um yeah, just protecting children's childhood and making sure that they have a happy time.
Yeah.
Adulthood has its challenges. Little children shouldn't have to face that.
Yeah. It's interesting. You've kind of embarked on a question I wanted to ask. We know that children who don't attend school, they become deficient in some way. So this goes into a couple of areas that I want to touch on. What is the threshold for concern when it comes to attendance? What level is it when we get worried about a child, and what is the impact that we know?
Okay, so schools have a statutory duty to make sure that children attend school. So what we call first day calling. If a child is not at school and the parent hasn't contacted us, we have to make contact with that family to find out where that child is. We have a responsibility
Yeah.
to do that. Um, if a child's attendance falls below 90%, then they're considered, that's a concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, up to about 90%. And then anything below that, we would consider severely absent.
Severely
Um,
upset for,
yeah,
11%.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, why? Why is that? Why is
And
that the number? What is
why
the?
is that? So school is a protective factor. So if a child is at school, they're considered to be safe. If they're not at school, then it's concerning. Um, yeah, school is a safe place. And it kind of links to a conversation that we had earlier on in the week about when we went into lockdown, how distressing that was for me, because I knew and I know for a fact that school is so many children's safe place. It's where a lot of them get their only hot meal, um,
Mm.
where a lot of them get to play outside and socialize, get to have conversations with adults and reason with adults without feeling threatened. And it's such an important part of children's lives. But yes, attending school is, yeah, that's like the baseline. You need to be at school every single day. Um, and when parents, this was, I was thinking about things that I would advise parents. One of the things is don't lie when it comes to your child's attendance, because particularly in primary school, they always tell the truth. They will tell one of their friends, or they can't, bless them. It's really difficult for them to
Oh,
hold in a lie.
Do you know what it is? Bear with me a second. Someone's calling me. I should have put it on. Do not disturb. 1 second. 1 second. Let's. There you go. Are we back? There you go. I should have put it on Do Not Disturb. Yeah, I'm listening. So, children tell the truth eventually.
Yeah,
Mm,
bless them. But the other thing is, I suppose there's a moral question here. You're a taxpayer, I'm a taxpayer. Part
mm,
of our taxes go towards schools.
mm.
We're paying for teachers to educate children, so children should be at school to receive that education that we're paying for.
Yeah.
They shouldn't just be at home doing nothing or going on holiday during term time, that's another whole thing.
That's a debate.
But yeah, I kind of empathize with parents that do that because of the cost of the holidays. But again, it's a moral dilemma, isn't it? Taxpayers, we're paying for children to be educated, and so their bottoms need to be on a seat in a classroom.
It's a tough one. I remember having a discussion with a parent, and their child had about 70% attendance. So and the thing is, the numbers 70% actually, the concept of 70, 80% sounds like a high number in principle, but I know the outcomes for children who are in that region in their lives is quite significant. I've done some
Mm,
research on it, but not only that, I said to this parent, where is your child 30% of the time?
mm,
A third of their waking life is where? And the parent reflected on the way that that question was framed. Child's, they were not being honest about their child's attendance because they don't know how to get their child to school. And I know there's a lot of parents out there who parenting strategies are a real challenge. How do I get my children to
mm,
school?
mm.
I want to talk about the homeschool thing in a moment, but no, let's do it now because we
Okay.
know, and then we'll come to lockdown in a minute. Homeschooling now is, some people will perceive it as under attack, especially in the light of the Sarah Sharif case.
Yes.
Sad case. I'm taking my kid out of school because I either don't like what the school is doing, for various reasons. What do you think? I mean, I homeschooled my eldest for a while and it was the best thing I did. It's just that I couldn't afford to do it for too long. And I would do it if I could, because I do believe there are some advantages to homeschooling if done properly. But what do you think about homeschooling and the government intervening in the way they have?
So it's a tough one. If there is a safeguarding concern, then parents shouldn't be allowed to homeschool until we know that that parent has the capacity to do the job well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're a parent, it's your right to, if you choose to home educate your child. I do think that it can be a bit sad because school provides so much more than just an education. There's a social side of things. So those children who
Yeah,
are poor attenders, a lot of them, I mean, I don't know the statistics on it, but I can guarantee a lot of them, their parents will be the ones that say, my child is bullied, or
yeah,
because their child hadn't had the opportunity to form real friendships because they're not at school. I see it all the time.
yeah,
And I remember saying to a parent, she said, oh, but she's been bullied for years. She hasn't got any real friends because her attendance is so poor. And when they do fun things like go on a trip or celebrate having great attendance or whatever it is, a dress up day, whatever it is, your child is missing out on those opportunities to socialize. And then, of course, she'll feel isolated and therefore feel like she's being bullied. But the simple solution to that is get her to school every day. It's that simple for a lot of children. But elective home education, I think parents have got the right to do that if they want to. But I do think if there's a safeguarding concern, it's not appropriate. However, I have seen many cases where parents have done that to avoid any kind of safeguarding
Ah,
investigation, and yeah,
mm.
it's incredibly sad. But hopefully things are going to shift.
Look, you're anti parental rights now, but but it's an interesting one. I agree with you actually in that parents should have the right to do that. The problem is, in my experience, is that I've seen too many parents opt to homeschool, but we know that they can't do it, especially for a
Mm,
teenager. I mean, I've got an
mm,
11-year-old child. Now, let me tell you the challenge that I will have. I'm doing maths with her. She's 11. She's still in primary school. And she's asking me questions about maths that I can't do. I just about got
mm,
maths for my social work degree, right?
mm.
So, how was a parent going to ensure what's the plan? And I'm all for the plan, but you're right though. If there's a safeguarding issue, should a parent have the right to take their child out of school?
No, no. And like I said, I've seen it too many times. Um, where parents school swap as well. That's the other thing that really frustrates me
Does that
because,
work? Does it? What does that do?
yeah, again, so parents have the right to put their child in any school if it's a place. And so, you see families where you're closing in, you're picking up on concerns, you're building a picture, and then they will apply to another school and move their child out of your school. Now, obviously, we have to pass on the safeguarding files,
Yeah.
although some of them don't get that. It just kind of goes over their head. They think they're getting away with it, as it
Oh,
were.
the parents don't get that. You mean that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that the
remember
history
having a
follows them.
yeah, I remember having a conversation with a parent not too long ago, and she said, "But I don't want this to go on her file."
Ah,
And I said, it is on the file, and it will be going to the new school." And she was really upset about it. But history tells us it's necessary. It is necessary for that information to be forwarded on to the next school.
yeah. Okay, let's talk about this now. We touched on it the other day. The lockdown. I
Mm.
can't believe it. The very table. Oh, I'm sitting around the same kitchen table that were in lockdown 5 years ago,
Mm.
where I was trying to do because I was working in a youth offending service then, 5 6 years ago, and I was wrapping up some work, and I was under a lot of pressure because the offices were closed. People were scared. Now we're home educating or partially home educating our children. Teachers have to adapt and start doing classes on Teams. My daughter was crying because she didn't get it. I'm stressed because I'm sitting around a table. I've got work to do. I'm
Mm.
under a lot of pressure. My wife was at the other end of the table. She's got work to do. And then my son, who, oh God, how old is he? About 11, 12 then, he was stressed because he wasn't getting it.
Mm.
Um, Saying that, we enjoyed lockdown because it was a great summer, but it was a horrible situation for us. Now, saying that, I live on the back of a park, a nice park. So I went out for walks twice a day. It was a beautiful summer, beautiful time. I liked the quiet, but I think I was so fortunate to have that experience. Whereas, what have you found with
So a
the lockdown period?
contrasting,
Yeah,
so a contrasting story to yours of going out every day. So you've got to remember that so many people were paranoid
yeah,
about COVID,
yeah,
like hugely paranoid. So one of our parents actually sent us a photo of their child's school jumper. So they put it outside on the day that school had closed, so the child could take off and they put it outside on the balcony, and they'd kept the doors locked and the windows locked and closed for so long that birds had built a nest in the school jumper during that period of time, however long that must have been, a couple of months, but they just stayed in the house. People were so scared. And that was the experience for lots of children. They didn't go out, they were just trapped inside the house, perhaps listening to the statistics. I mean,
The news was
um,
constant, wasn't it?
yeah, my husband and I made the decision not to have the TV on, not to look at the statistics, and not to expose our children to that. But not everybody thinks like that. And lots of people, their paranoia was fed, and they fed that to their children. And,
Yeah.
I think it's still impacting on children today. You have children, I mean, anxiety is huge, really significant amongst children.
I
Um,
mean, are you saying that the impact of lockdown in your experience is seen even now? I mean, that's
oh,
five
yes.
years ago.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, without
How does
doubt.
that work?
I mean,
So, you might have a 4-year-old in who spent how many months did we spend in lockdown? I mean, what was that? I mean, my memory's not too good.
well, it kind of went on sporadically for 2 years, basically. Um, I think that, again, this is anecdotally, there is a difference between the children who were allowed to come into school. So if you remember at the time, key worker children could come in and everybody else had to stay at home. Um,
Yeah,
and there's a difference between those children. Um, just think, so thinking about the children who are in reception now, and I'm speaking broadly because, as I said, I work across a number of schools. The children that we have in reception now are the children who were born during COVID. So everybody that they looked at had a mask on. They probably didn't have a lot of contact with a lot of people.
yeah.
And one of the biggest issues that reception teachers are facing at the moment is that social communication. It's the ability to um, take turns, listen to other children. It's not, they can get the phonics, they can get the maths. It's those life skills that they need that are really missing. Lots of children who, they're mispronouncing words. Um, the other thing that I've noticed is
Wow.
more children falling and breaking bones or fracturing bones because they were indoors for so long. There's a lack of vitamin D. So a lot more children, and they don't have the balance that you would expect, because obviously a normal part of child development is going out and running, balancing, climbing trees. Children didn't do those things, and it's missing from their child development. As schools, we have kind of a responsibility to put that back in.
Do you know what's interesting? When we were pregnant with our first, I was sitting in mother care whilst my wife was doing all the rounds, checking out different buggies and having consultations with staff. I sat down, picked up a book, and just out of coincidence, I went to a page that looked at the difference between white children and black children. We'll say black African versus
Hmm.
European children. And they said that black African children spend a lot of time strapped to the backs or hips of their parents, depending on what part of Africa. And those children tend to have more road accidents because they don't learn the key skills at a young age, how to cross a road.
Mm,
That's that's statistical, right?
mm,
And that's attributed to them not learning certain cues, certain life skills. We would overlook that so easily. We would never have guessed that just locking down families like that would have such a detrimental effect. And I'm asking you, 5 years later, and you're still seeing this.
yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I see it in not my younger children, but certainly my teenager who's 17. Um, it's things like, she gets worried about people dying. Anything that happens, is that person going to die? That's kind of her thinking. She automatically goes to, they're going to die. I remember my youngest. children he was in reception at the time when we first went into lockdown. Children do a lot of imaginative play. He would, maybe for about 2 years, he would make sanitizer. So anytime he got a bottle, he
Oh,
was filling it up with stuff and shaking it and writing sanitizer in his 5-year-old, 6-year-old handwriting. That was his imaginative play, was making hand sanitizer. It was, yeah.
this really does tell us that what it it doesn't take long to program a child
Mm,
for the rest of their life.
mm,
We've got adults who are still paranoid
yes.
since lockdown. I don't, I'm saying this sensitively. They're still there. They're still in
Mm,
lockdown in their
mm,
minds.
mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if we covered it, and this is a question that we might edit. Correlating factors. Did you cover that?
Not really. Um,
Did you have something for that?
no, I hadn't thought of anything under that.
Don't worry.
Uh,
Did you have a question for social workers?
Questions for social workers. But I've got two really specific questions. Are
Yeah.
you going to answer them?
Yeah, let's go. Let's try.
Okay. Do you think that there is a pushback from local authorities on children being pushed to CP, to child protection? Because it just seems very strange to me that the child protection numbers across our schools are quite low. And I'm just wondering if there's some sort of pushback, whether the threshold has been changed and we haven't, there's some internal memo to say we need to have less CP. Because, I look at some of the cases and I just think a few years ago that would have been child protection, no question. And a
Yeah.
lot of the cases now are just not reaching that threshold. What's changed?
Um, I think local authorities are responding to, ultimately they're responding to the number of social workers, the social workers' capacity. So numbers are high. In my opinion, depending on what local authority you work in, you'll have a lot more families on CP that don't need to be. Whereas if you come into a really tight space of London, for example, where there's a lot of exploitation, managers will say, we're not going to chase that one up because, and you're like, well, I've seen, because I've worked in so many different local authorities across the country, right to the end of the country, right to London, and I see the way they see things differently.
Mm,
And I guess even a local authority can become desensitized, rightfully or wrongfully, I don't know, but desensitized. But let's go into a bit deeper. I mean, I have families. Oh man, I remember this one recently where there is some risk for this family. All these professionals are saying we need to remove this child, and I was the only one that said no. I'm a manager in social work, so it's like my thing is I'm very focused on the threshold of our
mm,
intervention, which is my role ultimately when I allocate cases and chair meetings, right? My role is to make sure that the safeguarding element is managed.
mhm,
After that, we don't have a role. Whereas other professionals want us to have a role because they're just worried.
It's an interesting way of looking at it.
Different set of lenses because I'm about this.
Mm,
Look, children are going to have to go through life. Families will have challenges, but it's not about social services. It's about, is the child at risk,
mhm,
imminent risk of harm, already experiencing harm, neglect, abuse, yes or no? Yes, let's have a look at it. No, we're worried because I've had schools like she's not getting a child into school, and I'm like, that's not a safeguarding issue unless you can. There is education neglect, but that's really managed by the, what do they call it in your town? Legal intervention team. I don't know what you call it. Education welfare we used to call it. I don't know what they call it.
yes, yeah, EWO,
Yeah,
Education Welfare Officer. But what I would say to you,
Yeah,
and it feels like maybe social workers haven't been aware of this, but we spoke a couple of days ago, I talked about a key document for schools, which is keeping children safe in education. And as part of that, and this is again an outcome of lockdown, where children haven't been coming to school,
yeah,
where there is an attendance concern, we have been directed to that it meets threshold and therefore we should make a referral.
yeah,
So if Ofsted were to come in and you have a child with severe absence and you haven't um, pushed that somewhere, carried out some action,
yeah,
then we are in trouble for not having
yeah,
carried out our responsibilities. And that's why you're seeing these attendance cases coming your way.
yeah.
And
And
then we're challenged, when you throw it back, we're then asked, well, did you challenge back? Where's the communication to say you're not happy? Um,
this is
yeah.
that's a really, you see, let's go a little bit deeper, because what's severely poor attendance? What's that number?
I would say anything below 70
Yeah.
is
So
where you would be like, okay, we need to, unless there's a specific reason for it, as in the child is on a reduced timetable for some reason.
what we do is we will look at the family, and then we'll see if there are issues around why the attendance is low. Most of the time, in my experience, it's parents who have probably struggled to parent for a long time,
Mm.
and now their child is school refusing.
Mm.
I had one recently where I said to the school, look, there's no abuse, there is education neglect. Push ahead with legal intervention, or EWO, education welfare, and process, and see if we can trigger a response. This family have already had in the thousands fines. Now, it really is about a matter of poor parenting, right? But
Mm.
if the parents aren't triggered by that, we know there's a problem. No change has happened. They cannot and they will not engage to get those children in school. So with that family, we have worked. They're on quite a high level of intervention with us. But if that was the only issue, and there was no abuse, and it was just like the parents, I mean, most of the time, it's just parents who haven't ever employed the skills, and now their children are 11, 12, 13. Their children are saying, I'm not going,
I'm not doing
and you
it.
can't make me. Right.
Mm.
Does that need a social worker?
No.
but, but,
No.
but this is the debate, isn't it? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If we didn't have
But
many
then,
cases,
what? Then
ah,
what?
so
Is the
we will have.
question.
I encourage social workers to have that initial child in need meeting,
Mm.
and then put parents on notice, because it's an education issue. Ultimately, this is a behavior. There's no CAMS involvement because it's behavioral. There's no mental health.
Mm. Mm.
If the parents want help, they can get it. They can get. Nobody wants to hear it, but there's parenting courses out there for free.
Mhm.
There's a lot of courses out there for free. Not
Yep.
that many parents necessarily want to do it, but what role does a social worker have?
Mm.
And I know that there's an expectation for us to just do something.
Yes. But the difficulty for schools is that we are measured by our attendance.
Uh,
Again, if your attendance at the end of an academic year falls below national, it's a red flag.
yeah.
So every single child's attendance counts.
Wow.
And if they're not there, the question is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? What are you doing about
You
it?
referred it to
There's
us.
this pressure. Yeah.
That is an interesting perspective. That you've enlightened me a lot there.
Mm, yeah. And what can we do about it?
We do an assessment, and we find, as long as there's no abuse, and we will just say, look, school, push ahead.
Mm,
But the other thing that I've had as well is I've had professionals trying to push us to, we're at child in need, but we want to go to child protection, which is the next level up. And I'm saying to them, why?
Mm,
What we do is we are working with families in a non-oppressive manner. If they will work with us generally at the lower child in need level, why go to CP? They're doing everything. CP only means that we have the right to see the child and do our checks without the consent of the parent. And we can see the child at school without their permission. We don't have a right to go in their homes. We can't enforce much more than that.
mm,
Um, but child protection doesn't change anything if the parents are already working with us. If the parents have shown, let's say that their home's been really bad, not parenting, not feeding a child, and the parent says, I want help, I'm willing to do the work, we don't go to CP all the time.
mm.
Sometimes we'll just say, let's work with you at the consent level, you know. So that's how social workers see things, or ish
Yeah.
see things, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Our pressures are different to your pressures, I guess.
It's conflicting, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Conflicting.
Okay. So I have another question for you.
Yep.
And you might not do this, but I'll give you an example. We make a referral. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. A child has disclosed that they were physically harmed by a parent. Why does it take until 7 or 8 o'clock for a social worker to come? So they'll say the child cannot go home. So the school is left with a parent who comes to collect their child at the end of the day. Obviously, you're left having to communicate with this parent. Sometimes they're aggressive, angry, understandably, because you're not letting them have their child. And social worker will rock up at like 7, 8 o'clock without a care in the world. It's the most frustrating. I've been in that situation so many times, Curtis. I cannot tell you. And it's so frustrating. I just think, do these social workers not understand that we've been at school since 7 o'clock? We've now sat here, we've had to scrabble together some food for this child. We've had this parent shouting, hurling abuse at us because we're not letting them have their child. And they just rock up like, we told you at 10 o'clock. What's taken so long?
Okay, so we're talking
What takes
significant.
so long?
Are we talking significant abuse when there's a Section 47, or are we just talking about a disclosure? What are you talking about?
A disclosure.
Um, there's a number of answers for that, right? Let's just look at a disclosure. My mum hit me,
Mm,
or my dad hit me. Yeah. Now I have to prod you about the scenario because that will make all the difference, and I'm going to tell you how it works. Why we take so long. So, are there any marks?
no.
Is the child afraid?
Yes.
Are they already open to us?
No. Oh, previously open.
Previously open, so they're not currently open,
Mm,
but they have history.
mm,
Okay, so if it hasn't gone to strategy meeting and it's not a Section 47, then we will come when we've got the opportunity.
right. Okay.
Sorry.
Wow.
But let's say that child had a mark.
Mm,
Um, it will have a strategy meeting as soon as possible. And this is a situation I found myself in a number of times. We wait for the police to be available because they're a part of the strategy meeting. Police are, it's unbelievable how short staffed they are.
mm,
It's crazy. So we wait for a police officer to attend the meeting, which is the same officer all the time, and that's all they do all day. But then they have to get a specialist officer out if it's a Section 47, and they may not have anyone that day, or they may not have anyone until 5, 6 o'clock, and we have to wait because it could be a joint meeting, a joint investigation. And we
right.
can't see that child or do anything with that child until that police officer gets there because it could be a criminal investigation. So sometimes I have social workers saying, look, I'm here, it's 5:30, I want to go to bed. I'm waiting for the outcome of that Is the police officer going to be coming? And and the police are saying, we've got no one to go out until,
Wow.
or they might say, we're going to have to leave it till the next day.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
But given your original, if there's nothing significant, that's going to have to wait.
Mm,
And sadly, I hate to say it, but sadly, we are usually 3 4 times a week handling the same situation on top of everything else that we've got to do. So we'll have every child social worker is going to have that particular situation 3 times a week easily, just on one child or two children, and school is going to be waiting. Yeah, what the
yeah. It's very frustrating.
I know. And the thing is, I think you already knew. Is just
Yeah, I think, yeah. The reason it's frustrating is because you know the next day they're just going to say, yeah, we took the child back home. Parent has had to sign a working together agreement, and that's it. And you just think, well, I've had to sort out childcare for my own child because I've had to stay at school till whatever time. And, you know, yeah, everything has an impact on everything else, I guess.
yeah.
Schools don't plan, we don't plan to be there until 7, 8 o'clock. So we then have to make it work.
Oh, I'm back now. Sorry.
He's
Yeah.
frozen.
I was listening the whole time. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, they were my two.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, they were my two questions.
Mm.
I think my two main questions.
So what I wanted to do to wrap this up, I always ask professionals for their top tips, and I'm considering
Hmm.
this is for parents, whatever you want to point to. But I've learned so much today, and I would love for you to throw what you consider to be the main things. You've got a lot of experience. I'm looking forward to hearing your top tips. What's tip number one?
Number one would be children are children until they're considered children, and in statute, they're described as children until they are 18, and you have a responsibility for them. So don't think they're 7 now. I don't need to check whether they've brushed their teeth. They're 11 now. I don't need to check that they've put deodorant on. They are your responsibility. Listen to them, care for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
care for your children.
Yeah.
That would be my one of my top tips. I think monitoring internet use. So
Oh,
many parents are naive to what their children are exposed to
yeah.
on the internet, whether it's through gaming or whether it's just through YouTube. Um, you know, if you've got a young child, think twice before you give them a smartphone, because you're basically giving your child the world in their hand.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just put them outside your front door and not pay any attention to them. That's basically what you're doing by giving them the internet in their pocket. So think about
Yeah.
what your child is doing online. Think carefully before you give your child a smartphone. Um,
And
I
what?
personally have backtracked on mine. So my sons had, they weren't, they couldn't make phone calls, but they had our old phones and they would play games on them. We've taken them away. And it's made such a massive difference. It's really funny though, because they've got brick phones and they don't know how to use them. But again, that's about protecting their childhood.
Yeah, and and
They're,
and
they're
and and just to add to that, if you're giving your child a phone, you've got to give it to them already with monitoring applications.
absolutely, yes, yes. Be prepared to learn all of that stuff.
Yeah, so my daughter, she has a phone, but it's connected to her mum's phone,
Hmm.
so we can monitor, see exactly what she's looking at, and we can lock down applications
Mm.
if she's using it too much. You know, Roblox is a thing that I was
Don't
whilst we're
talk
there.
about
Whilst we're
that.
there, Roblox is, I've realized through watching a few documentaries online, my son showed it to me actually, that Roblox is really a grooming platform.
Mhm. Yeah. I think a lot of parents are starting to realize that though. I've been doing pupil interviews at a lot of our schools recently, and a lot of them said, don't use that anymore. My parents won't let me use it. So it's really nice. So I think the message is getting through.
Yeah, lovely.
So that is good. Yeah. But yeah, monitoring internet use, I would say, is really, really important. I think for any parents, if you're signposted to support, and it goes back to something you said earlier, free parenting or whatever it is, engage in that support. It can make a difference. And I've seen it make a difference to so many families when they actually engage.
Yeah.
If there is an issue, engage, and it will make a massive difference to your life, or it can make a massive difference to your life.
Yeah, the earlier you start, parents, the earlier you get hold of support, the better. If you wait till I mean, honestly, in my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong, Michelle. I think when we get to about 11, 12, it can almost feel like it's too late.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah. You've got a massive uphill struggle.
Yeah,
Massive. Yeah. I think
the main.
they're my main top tip.
Well,
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much. You've opened my eyes a lot. I now know why schools are sending us all these cases because you see a heck of a lot, and
Mm,
we really have just a very small snapshot about what you are doing. Schools aren't just about teaching; they are a haven for children, and that's their socializing ground. Anything below, like you said, 90%, that 10, 11% drop is significant for their future. Is that about right?
mm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm so glad I spoke to you. The way you broke it down, you didn't just say it; you said it from your heart. So I know you love your job, and I really appreciate your time tonight. And for those of us who were born in the '70s, it is bedtime.
It is indeed, isn't it? Curtis? It
So
is. Oh, thank you for having me, Curtis. I really appreciate this conversation because it has got me thinking a lot. And it's also made me realize just how big the job is because what we've talked about is just a tiny portion in terms of safeguarding, in terms of what schools doing for safeguarding, because we've got the whole preventative side. So there are all the children who aren't vulnerable, but schools do have a responsibility to teach all of those children online safety, rail safety, road safety, how to brush their teeth, um, how to treat other people from different religions with respect, the pants rule, the NSPCC number,
oh,
all those children who haven't been exposed to anything, we still have to make sure that they know how to keep themselves safe as well. Um, so yeah, it's a massive job, but I love it.
yeah, I just can't get my head around the fact that you guys are not just teachers, you are protecting a whole generation every single day.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I can't say enough. I just appreciate this session, and hopefully it will be great learning for anyone else who listens. So thank you for your time, and everybody have a good night, and I hope this helps. Take care.
It's Curtis.
How do I pause? Stop. Stop recording.